because I told him that I was going to pick on him a few weeks ago, and I haven't done it yet, and I want to be a man of my word. So Jeff, you have been selected by a random selection process of me saying you're it to do this memory thing for me. So how do you think your memory is? No good. All right, well, perfect. It'll work great then. And does anybody know that there's actually been research to show how many numbers, digits, a person generally on average can memorize? Do you know what that number is? It's actually been proven that in general, on average, 7 numbers. A basic telephone number without area code is what somebody could memorize. But I didn't want to put you on the spot and have 7 numbers for you to memorize. So I'm going to give you a five digits that I want you to memorize, okay? All right, so you ready for this? Yes. 93681. Okay, so Jeff, people don't really know you. I was just curious. How old are you?
46.
46. Wow, you're almost my age. I'm 49. I'm going to be 50 next year.
Nice.
So, hey, do you remember the phone number of the home you grew up in?
Yes.
What is it?
324-7264.
324-7264. See, I memorized that, and I just had it. Another number that we often have that's actually a 9-digit number that we memorize, right, is what? Is our Social Security number. And I was going to have you tell them what your Social Security number is, but I know that people will want to steal your identity and want to become you. But this is what I'd like you to do just right now. You know what your Social Security number is by heart, I'm sure. Okay, so just in your head right now, I want you to just kind of say it in your head for a second.
You're making me forget the 5 digits.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, have you said the Social Security number?
Yeah.
Okay, have you done it again?
Yeah.
Okay, what year is it?
2019.
Okay, well, you're doing pretty good. We're doing good. So you remember the number, the 5-digit number that?
93861.
Yeah.
I had to.
All right. Give him a hand. That was pretty good. He had the right numbers. They weren't in the right order. Actually, no, I think you did have it. What'd you say it was? No, he was right. It's 93681. Neva. Yeah. Well, again, I asked him to remember it for just a short bit of time, but why was it a challenge? I was distracting him with a lot of other numbers, and those other numbers, he was trying to hold on. And he knew I'm supposed to memorize this, so he's trying to hold on to it, but I'm throwing all these other numbers. Life kind of does that to us, that our memories sometimes are affected by all the distractions and noise that come in around us and take us away from what we really want to remember. This morning, we're finishing up our series on labels. Okay, this has been something where we look at, labels are important. Labels tell us that this is a can of corn, maybe? I don't know. If you want to know what's in these cans, come to the harvest dinner on November 8th, because they will be revealed. Because you'll be eating this at the harvest dinner. Let's hope we didn't buy dog food. But no, it'll be good. It'll be good. But labels are important. Labels help us know what's in something. But here's the problem: is a lot of labels that we wear on the outside, when we talk about our own selves, aren't really true. They mask what really we feel or have labeled ourselves on the inside. And a lot of those labels on the inside can be negative labels that can hold us back and bind us from being everything that God has called us to be. So, we talked starting out about how, the label of I am weak, that a lot of times people feel like they're weak, they're not strong, and that's not necessarily just a physical strength, but an emotional, mental strength. We looked at not being disciplined, and last week, Christy gave us a beautiful message of understanding that sometimes you can feel like you're broken, But God can heal you, and God can set you free from that label that you're trying to wear. But this morning, I want to talk about another label. I want to talk about a label called forgotten. I am forgotten. And I think this is a label that there are a lot of people, maybe not, you may not wear this label. You may not say, that's a label I have, but I'm sure that there's somebody in your life somewhere that's feeling this. They're feeling lonely. They're feeling disconnected. They're feeling like nobody understands what they're going through. Maybe because of past mistakes or their background or some health infirmity or something that they're going through has put them in a position. And you know, I even think that another word that sometimes can lead people to this feeling of forgotten that a lot of people struggle with in our culture is depression. That they feel like they're all alone. Nobody can understand them. They may be in a room full of people, but they feel beaten up and beaten down. Because when things aren't going our way, it's easy to feel forgotten. When things aren't going the way we expect or think they should go, when it doesn't meet up to our American dream or our ideal or what we seem to look at other people on sitcoms and movies, everything's working out in 30 minutes and it's not working that way for us, it can feel like that we are forgotten. You know, whether it's because of a medical illness that you think you're the only one going through, or job or family issues and stress. I remember, in fact, several years ago, I was working at a college, and I went through a season where the administration of the college changed, and my direct supervision at the highest level was changed. And right from the get-go, right off the bat, we were not on the same page. I believe he misunderstood me and where I was coming from and basically put me in a bucket, maybe labeled me, if you will, and he treated me with, like I was doing everything wrong. And I struggled because in some ways I felt like I could never please him. I never quite understood what he wanted. In fact, every couple weeks when I met with him, I felt like he was asking me for something different. And I went through months of just feeling undervalued, underappreciated, not being listened to, not being understood. It probably, I think, took me even into a depression. I stopped eating right. I stopped sleeping right. And I was feeling really alone. I was feeling like nobody else could understand what I'm going through because I felt like I was having to battle it alone. And I don't think many people haven't had some time in their life that they maybe haven't felt that way. And maybe they're feeling that way right now even. In fact, there's a passage in Isaiah chapter 49 I want us to look at this morning. In this passage, Isaiah, the prophet, is talking about God, but also kind of giving a dialogue, if you will, between the people of Israel, God's people, and their feeling about their situation, about how what they expect or what they think should be happening as opposed to what is happening. Them not feeling like things are going their way is making them feel like they are forgotten. And so I'm actually going to read this morning from the Message translation. This is a little bit more of a paraphrase translation, which basically means that it's kind of getting the intent and it's not a word-for-word translation. But I think in this passage of Isaiah, it captures the heart of what the author is actually saying for us. Starting in verse 13, it says, "Heavens, raise the roof. Earth, wake the dead. Mountains, send up cheers. God has comforted his people. He has tenderly nursed his beaten up, beaten down people." Now, that's a really nice start that sounds like, wow, this is really great. God has comforted his people. God has lifted them up. He has taken his beaten down people and he's lifted them up. But here's the response of Israel in verse 14. It says, but Zion, another name for Israel, another name for God's people. It says, but Zion said, even though they were told he has comforted his people, but Zion said, I don't get it. God has left me. My master has forgotten I even exist. So it doesn't matter what the truth was about how God has provided for his people. Their feeling was that God has left them. God has abandoned them. He's forgotten them. And then the author, Isaiah, goes on to explain these words that come from God. In verse 15, it says, can a mother forget the infant at her breast, walk away from the baby she bore? You know, I mean, that's a picture we can understand, especially if you're a mom. But the author says, but even if a mother forgets, I never forget you. Never, God says. Look, I've written your names on the back of my hands. The walls you're rebuilding are never out of my sight. The builders are faster than your wreckers. The demolition crews are gone for good. Look up, look around, look well. See them all gathering, coming to you, as sure as I am the living God. God decrees. You're going to put them on like much jewelry. You're going to use them to dress up like a bride. So Israel here is in a situation. That's one of the things you got to kind of understand. Israel is going through a time where they were disobedient to God, and God allowed them to be brought into a captivity. And that captivity was not necessarily a pleasant situation for them. But God allowed it to happen for a reason and for a season. It wasn't forever. It was for a time, for a purpose, for them to help understand. But when they were in trouble or remained in trouble, they equated that situation as meaning God's not there. God's not for us. God's forgotten us. And I think we can do that sometimes too. Like I said, when things aren't going our way, we often interpret that as being forgotten. It's easy to feel that way because we confuse waiting for abandonment. We confuse waiting for abandonment. I know there's some people there, and I need your help, that are on the same page with me on this. Raise your hand if you're like me and you hate waiting. Oh, thank you. All the impatient people in the world, unite. I hate waiting. My kids will tell you I am probably the most impatient person when it comes to waiting for them ever. And don't say anything right now. I hate waiting. And I was thinking about this week because I was like, I'm trying to talk about this thing and understand that sometimes, waiting feels like you're forgotten. Why do I hate waiting so much? And I thought about it and I said, well, I think sometimes in that mental processing you have when you say, okay, I'm going to be here at this time, you need to be ready and everything like that, and you're waiting on somebody, I often equate waiting to the fact that they don't care about me. They don't care about my time. They don't care about my effort. They maybe have forgotten that I was going to be there. Or, you equate all of these things mentally, and it's not just about the time that it takes. It's about the idea that waiting I interpret as a disconnect with who I am and where I'm at. So I feel like I'm not remembered and I'm not important. So I hate waiting. And I don't, like I said, others of you are in the same place. And we see sometimes, I think, other people that are in situations, maybe health situations, job situations, financial situations, relationship situations, and it looks like they either have everything together, or if they were going through some kind of struggle or difficulty similar to what we've had, they got an answer quicker than you did. Have you ever seen that? And does that make you feel more remembered or less? Makes you feel more forgotten. Makes you feel like, God's not there. He's remembered them, so if he could answer them, he could provide for them. Why doesn't he do it for me? So we can understand Israel here. They're looking at these people that they're in captivity with, and they're saying, wow, they look blessed. They have things provided for them, and here we are. We're still captive. God says that he's going to take care of us, but our situation says that we're not being taken care of. We're not being served. How many people here have ever gone out to a restaurant to eat? Okay, you can participate. How many people have ever gone out to a restaurant to eat and had to wait for their food? Too long. How do you feel? Angry. Or hangry? Hangry? Yeah, hangry. Yeah, we feel that we don't like it. It doesn't feel good. We often feel forgotten. Did they forget us? I mean, a lot of times I don't have as much problem waiting. If it's going to be a little bit longer for food, I worked in the food industry enough. If the server comes back and they say, hey, I know it's taken a long time. I'm sorry. They got a little backed up. It's coming though. If they came out and did that, I usually am a little bit more patient. What I don't like is when I've been waiting what I feel is too long and nobody's come even and said anything to me, right? When I feel like they're being silent. And I think we do the same thing with God, is that if we understood that there was a purpose, we understood that there was something more to the waiting, if we understood, yes, 10 tables came in right when you did, so we got a little backed up, just be patient with us, I can have more understanding for that then, right? I don't want you to bring me out a raw hamburger. I'd like it to be cooked, and if waiting an extra 5 minutes to make it cooked, I'll wait the 5 minutes. Okay, I want the cake done baking and cooled before I try to eat it. Whatever that is, this is what we need to remember. God always has a purpose in waiting. There's always a purpose behind our needing to wait. And we may not always see it, we may not always understand it, but there's a purpose. And you can see examples of that in history. And it's easy because when we read stories of people in the Bible, we read them from beginning to end. Sometimes we forget that there were years, decades, that these individuals had to live in them. Take King David, for instance. David was a little shepherd boy when God had Samuel anoint him as king. Did he take the throne the next day? No. He went through decades of being chased and tried to be killed by Saul, by betrayal, by all of these things. He went through all horrible things before he ever got to the point that he actually took the position that God had chosen for him. Or what about Joseph? Joseph was given a dream by God, a vision that he was going to be used in this mighty way by God to rescue his people as a young lad, but then he had to go through being imprisoned and in slavery before he ever got to that place that God had for him. Now, I could imagine that there may be times in those individuals' lives that they stopped and wondered, God, why am I here? Have you forgotten what you said you were going to do with me? Have you forgotten the purpose you had for my life? Have you forgotten me? And we can feel that same way. I think that's why James reminds us in chapter 1. He says, consider it pure joy, my brothers, when you face trials of many kinds, because it is the testing of your faith that develops perseverance. Perseverance is something that doesn't happen in 10 minutes. Perseverance is something that happens maybe in 10 years. Because the testing of your faith develops perseverance, and perseverance needs to finish its work so that you can be mature. I tell people sometimes, when you want to be rescued from trouble and difficulty and struggles, you actually sometimes may just be shortchanging your maturity. Because if you don't go through it and you're rescued from it, you probably aren't experiencing everything that you need to experience to learn the lessons of maturity. So God sometimes will let Israel, God will sometimes let us, God will let his people that are loved and cherished be in situations that may not always be good, and they may feel like they're forgotten. But we need to remember that just because we're waiting doesn't mean that God doesn't have a purpose. Doesn't mean that we're forgotten. Because when we look at our circumstances, we may miss his presence. When things are going bad, the first thing we don't think usually is, that's okay, God's with me. Usually when things are going bad, we're thinking, oh, I need God with me. But you know what that implies? That we don't think he is. That we think that he's left us. That we think that if God were with me, I wouldn't be facing this. Martha, remember Mary and Martha? They had a brother by the name of Lazarus. He was sick, and they sent for Jesus because they knew that if Jesus came, what? Their brother wouldn't die. But Jesus didn't come. Jesus waited, and their brother did die. And when Jesus showed up, Martha said something to Jesus. She said, Jesus, if you were here, my brother wouldn't have died. Because her expectation was that he was going to be there. That he needed to be, he got the call for help, and that was going to be the way that God was going to answer through Jesus. But what happened? You know the rest of the story. Jesus went to the tomb, told him to roll the stone away, and he said, Lazarus, come out. And the man that had been in the tomb walked out. Sometimes we just don't understand. When we look at our circumstances, we look at what is holding us back, we don't understand that God is still with us, even though it may not be working out the way we think it should. We're not forgotten in those moments. I think one of the pictures that I have is, anybody that's ever known a runner or been a runner, and they're in a long race, there's something that they talk about. They talk about hitting the wall a lot of times when they're in a race. Hitting the wall is basically, it's that moment in the race that you start questioning, can I go on? Can I persevere? Can I push through and finish this? It's usually somewhere around the middle or 2/3 into the race, they'll hit this wall. And you really, when you hit the wall, you have two choices. You can either look at how much distance you still have, and usually if you look at how much you still have to go, you probably will quit. Or you can look at how far you've come. And if you look at how far you've come, usually you'll keep going. Because if you look at how far you've come, you'll sit there and you'll say, I've come this far, I can go further. But if you look at how much you still have left, you often forget how far you've come. And we do that in life a lot of times too. That's why I think in Isaiah 49, towards the end, the author says, look up, look around, look well. Because it's so easy for us to miss God's presence. It's so easy for us to miss that he's there, even in the midst of our circumstances that may not be as ideal or like we want. So he's saying, look up, look around, look well. Israel was brought out of slavery in Egypt, and they crossed through the Red Sea on dry land as God miraculously provided for them and destroyed the mighty Egyptian army that was chasing them. And they get out in the desert on their way to Mount Sinai, and they start getting short on food and water. And what do? Moses, why have you brought us here to die? God had been with them in all of those difficult circumstances. If they looked back and saw everything that God had done for them, they should have realized that it doesn't matter that they don't have food. It doesn't matter they don't have water. God will provide. But instead, they looked at their circumstances that they were in the moment and said, God must have forgotten us. He brought us out here, and that's it. But God did provide for them. God didn't forget them. God was with them. He was teaching them a lesson. But often when we don't look well, we're tempted to doubt. It's an expression I'm sure you've heard, you can't see the forest through the trees. You seen that? You've heard that? You know, it's one of those things where you're in the middle of a forest and you see a bunch of trees and somebody says, do you see the forest? And usually you'll say, oh no, I just see a bunch of trees. Hello? What do you think a bunch of trees is? You know, can you see God's provision in the midst of all your circumstances? You know, sometimes we don't. And then when we don't, we miss that. And then it causes us to see our need and focus on our need, and we miss God's supply. So what? Jeff, what's our 5-digit number? 93861. Give him a hand. I am so impressed. Now I'll ask him next week, and it'll probably be gone. Oh, you got it? Oh, good. Have anybody ever played the little search and find game, Where's Waldo? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about? These little pages that are illustrated, and there's a little guy named Waldo. He's got a red and white striped shirt and a little red hat and everything on. And in these complicated pages, you'll have, he'll be in there somewhere in this picture, and it takes a while to find him, you know? Danielle, I saw you nod your head. What's the longest it's probably taken you to find Waldo? It's been a long time, all right. Do you think you would have spent 20 minutes looking for him? Okay, maybe about 10 minutes. Okay, all right. Well, that's fair. You're pretty good then. But here's the thing I look at with the little Waldo things. If I showed you a little Where's Waldo picture, it has all these, different scenes, different settings, has a bunch of little pictures in it. Waldo's in there somewhere. But if I said to you, Jason, here's a little picture, Waldo might be in there somewhere. You would probably look for 2 or 3 minutes, and if you didn't find him, he's not there. Because why? I said he might be in there somewhere, right? And if you can't find him quickly, you probably will move on, right? Why do people keep looking longer to find Waldo? Why do they spend 10 minutes? Why? You know he's there. They didn't misprint the books. Somewhere in there is this Waldo character. It's why Browns fans keep thinking they can win. They know it's there somewhere. Jason, that wasn't in my notes. That was bonus. Just because I picked on you, I don't know. You didn't wear your jersey this week. That's why. Where's Waldo? You keep looking because you know he's there. Right at the beginning of Isaiah 49, verse 13, it says, God has comforted his people. He has comforted his people. You know he's there. You know he's there. That's why we keep looking. When we're trusting his future goodness, it's because of his past goodness. We can continue to trust him. Because if you look at it this way, if God the Father sent his only Son to die on the cross to save us from our own mortal destruction, our own spiritual destiny of death, if God didn't even spare his own Son for us, why would he forget us now? Why would he leave us in this situation, in this place? So, know he is there. Look for him. Look up. Look around. Look well. He is there. We just need to look for him. Jesus said, I will never leave you or forsake you. That is a fact. You can put a stake in it. You can understand that even in the hard times, he is with us. Even when you feel most alone, he is there. Even when you feel forgotten, he is not far away from you. He is there. He is walking with us in the midst of those moments and those times. Forgotten is a state of mind. It is not a state of our being. We are never forgotten. And you want to know why I know that? Because God can't forget us. It's not in his nature. If God is who God is, he can't forget us. He says he is with us. He says he will remember us. He promises that. So as long as God is God, you cannot be forgotten. You are his child. You are loved, and you are remembered. Though other people may disappoint us and let us down, God can't. It's not just that he won't. God can't. He is with us. And as we close our service this morning, we're going to come to the communion table. And you know what's amazing? And we kind of cover this up every Sunday, but I'm going to kind of uncover it here just for a second because I think this is important. There's something written on our table, and I'm sure most of you have seen this. But what does that say?